Yeah, we might as well. We might as well get started. Gotta stand out here in the light. I can't see in the dark. Welcome to Stories of Vermilion Oral History Series, presented by the Vermilion Area Archival Society in collaboration with the Vermilion History Museum and Ritter Public Library. I am Rich Tarrant. I'm the curator of the Vermilion History Museum. The program is being videotaped, so please turn off your cell phones. He's also, I believe, streaming it live so you can run home and watch it if you don't want to stay here, because he didn't do the popcorn. I'm going to do this in two parts. A lot of this, I think that some of you people who have seen things have seen some of these things, but that's okay. You'll see them again. You can talk about them maybe a little bit more than what you've seen in books and things like that. The first part, I just wanted to show you what you're looking at here. This was taken several years ago when we were working upstairs over the museum, and I just wanted to show what it looked like then. And some of you people who have visited the museum and gone upstairs, you know what it looks like today. But it doesn't look like this. You'd be amazed. I'll let it play.
The work that we've done up here in the apartment, in the living room part, taking all the lath down. You've seen this pictures of the living room before. You can see how much work we've done. I'm going to shoot straight up here at the ceiling. That was all lath up there. It's just junk and stuff over here. I'm just going around at 360 for you. You know, we discovered while we're doing this, if you look up there, close to the ceiling, so I can move up on it some. Oh, there. See right up to the ceiling, those broken pieces of lath up there. They run into the next room. So
just want to stop it there for a minute. That's going pretty fast. I have no idea why it's doing that, but I don't talk that fast.
They must have done the ceiling lath first and then put up the wall. Interesting. But this has been a bear. Not only did we have to take the lath down, then you have to go through and make sure all the nails are out of the rafters and the walls because they're going to put up drywall. The next thing we're going to do, let me shoot up straight up here. You can see where the fan and the lights are going to go. There's a light behind me as well. I'm going to show that. But that rafter there is kind of about an inch lower than it should be. So we're going to brace it up on the upper floor so that the ceiling is flat. But boy, what a lot of work. And if I just walk through here into the hallway entrance to the apartment, and look up there at that ceiling, I'm going to take that barrier down. There's lath up there. I thought I was going to have to take the lath down, but I don't think I will. The ceiling is pretty level. You just put the drywall up on it. I'm going to walk over here real quick. We've got to take the plaster down off the ceiling, but again, I don't think we're going to have to take the lath down. We can just plasterboard over it, and I'd rather do that to try to preserve the walls the best that we can. I know they aren't beautiful, but they're not supposed to be. This is an original building. If you look here in the ceiling, you'll see cracks and stuff. They kind of have to be repaired a little bit, but probably for people walking through. As you can see, a lot of work.
I hope this goes a little slower than that last one. I have no idea why it was running so fast. Felt like I was running around that room. Watch, this one will go very slow. I did this several years ago, not intending to do what I'm doing now, just because I wanted to try it. That's what this is. If you didn't know Frank Atkins or George Spring, they helped us out quite a bit. This, of course, is the way it was, the lower photograph when we started at the museum over there. I don't know who chose that color, but boy, was it bad. That's the lower part is 2011. You see that on there. This is kind of an interesting photograph. This is in front of the museum on Grand Street. Across the street in the lower photograph, these two homes, of course, are gone now. That truck there belonged to A.D. Baumhart. You'll see it later as we go through these photographs. He was a little stuck in that mud. Roads are a little better now. This photograph, I'll pause it again. The reason I have this photograph is this bookcase on the right. It's over here. I featured it here. We still have this bookcase. It's really a nice bookcase. That may be my mother or my aunt sitting in that chair there. This is the office downstairs. When we started, you can see the windows were still covered. And you see that back wall. My brother began to strip that back wall. I don't know what he had in mind, but stripping tongue and groove wood is probably not a real good idea. It's kind of hard to do. What I ended up doing was painting everything. I had to paint the whole room, but I painted over that because that was never going to be able to get that stripped clean. Not by me, anyway. This is just looking into the print shop, the way it looked in the lower part there. It doesn't look too bad, that lower part, but it was pretty dirty in there. I was telling my wife today I had to crawl under those linotype machines to get the lead out from under them. This photograph here is interesting because here's the wall. They're standing right here. Here's the wall now. It looks almost the same, almost identical. That's my oldest brother and a little lady named Helen Ellsworth working with him there. This again is upstairs. We were just looking at it when I'd taken all the lath off the walls and the ceilings, and boy was that a job, as I was saying before. You take that lath off the walls and off the ceilings, and that's fine getting it off. But under that are a bunch of nails on the rafters. This is the entrance room when you come up the stairs. You saw that. The ceiling you saw was falling down when I took that other photograph. But this is what it originally looked like. And then again, back into that living room, the way it looked originally. Kind of looks neat there in that lower photo. A little dark. And this is a bedroom. This was kind of difficult too. The roof had been leaking, and that's why all this plaster is coming off the ceiling here. So what we had to do was take all the plaster off of probably 3/4 of that ceiling, which was a dusty job. But then we fixed the walls and put paper on them. It looks pretty nice now. Here are kids, as you can see. This older picture was taken behind the Ian Art Church. Jenny's in that picture, my sister. I don't know what year it might have been. Jenny's right here. This is Doris Boone to the left. Probably know some of these kids. I know Tom Rogers is a little boy here. The Greenewalt boy here. But in any case, I always liked this picture. In any case, they put on a play one summer, and they got together and they did it by themselves. It was like everybody had a talent. It was a talent show kind of, and I thought it was really neat. No adults were really involved in it. They just did it themselves. This upper photograph is here's my wife Georgie with all the kids in the neighborhood. She had quite a gang there, and she had games and stuff for them. I thought they were kind of matched up with nice pictures. When summer gets a little slow, the kids need things to do. This photo, this lady here is in the audience. I saw her. She's right there. It's Jane Smith back there. That's Joe Mayer. This is Lee Kress, and I've forgotten this girl's name. I know who it is, but I forgot her name. And there's Larry Dickerhoff, John Brunton. Some of the people in the audience may remember those people. But it's on this corner, on the corner of, yes. The technical guy will do it. Okay. How's that? Can you hear? Okay, this photograph was taken on the corner of State Street or South Street, Grand Street, and State Street. As I said just a minute ago, Jane Smith's in here, walking across the street. Joe Mayer, Lee Kress, Larry Dickerhoff, John Brunton. This was taken back in the 50s during a parade. And I can't read Fitzgerald, I think that was that girl's last name. I can't remember her first name. But these houses, of course, are all still there. That's really kind of a nice picture of for me anyway, because I knew most of these people. Yeah. I have to be coached. I keep messing up here. This, of course, should be familiar to most people here. The library. This is a newer picture. That's the way it is. Much. Well, it is today. Not today, but maybe a year ago. I don't know whether the bed and breakfast was in here when this photograph was taken, and this was the library. That's a nice picture. I know that Patty Kishman liked this picture because there's the baby buggy here in front of the new library. These are the New York Central Depot, which everybody knows is still there, owned by the Catholic Church today. That's a nice building. And this, most people will recognize, this is Main Street, Vermilion, right here, where it was the Engelbrees back then, supply builders. I should have gotten a little closer when I took this photograph, but I wasn't as close as I should have been. Probably taken in 1937 during the Centennial Parade. I like this picture because I like these old cars. That's Main Street, was Division Street back then. Of course, we all know what it looks like today. And that's probably back here. It's easy for me to see here, but I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying to point at it, but there's the bandstand that used to be in the park down here. This building, I'm not sure what's in these two stores today, but years ago, and this was probably around 1913, this was a funeral home, Beekles Funeral Home, or Beckles, however they did pronounce it. It was an important place in town. Beckel also, like a lot of the old undertakers, sold furniture as well. This one, most people will recognize. It's been a bar forever, but it sure looked neat when it was Nolan's Saloon. This is, of course, A.D. Baumhart. This is what it looks like today. It almost looks the same, this store. One of the reasons I want to point this out here, see this truck here? That was the one that was on Grand Street across from the print shop in the other photograph, mired in the mud. That was his truck. A.D. was quite a dapper guy. This picture I like simply because, as you can see, this is Division Street, Main Street, we call it today. And the building is a little bit different here. Here's the bank building. Back then, that whole was one piece to one building. The bank bought only a portion of it and built the bank. They tore down that first half and then built onto it. But more than that, in this photograph, there's no Fisher building on the corner. The building that was there was Maud Elton Hotel, had been moved down to the bottom of the hill at Exchange Park, and that was empty. I don't know whether the fence was there because there was a hole in the ground or what it was going on, but that's an unusual photograph. This, of course, is when the Fisher building was being constructed. Again, I like this picture. This is one of the first pictures that my brother developed, and I really liked it. There again is the Fisher building when it was new, getting to be built. And down here, Elton Fisher, Elton's dad had his son had a car dealership down at this end of the building at one time. I don't know how they got the cars in and out of it. Again, Division, Main Street. Some of the people, or all of the people here, will remember when the A&P store was here on the corner. Vermilion was a busy place, as you can see. It's not that it's not real busy now, but it seemed to be busier back then. Of course, they didn't have shopping centers and stuff like that. So people were doing a brisk business. You'll see that they had angle parking on Division Street, Main Street. Over here was the meat market. At one time that was Negu's, it was Star Gardeners. There was a restaurant here. Nice photograph. This cannon, if you ever look at these cannons, you'll see how smooth they are and shiny. It's because of these kids. I don't know how many of you people grew up here, but you probably sat on these cannons. This happens to be two of my older brothers and my sister Nancy, my young sister Nancy. I want to just stop that for a minute, see if I can get it back. Okay, all right. I only want to mention here about these cannons just for a minute. There used to be cannonballs stacked beside these cannons. And I was reading in an old newspaper sometime something that George Wakefield had written. And George said that those cannonballs are down under the fish house, probably in the river, because the kids got a hold of them and rolled them down in there. Yeah. That was my dad. Yeah. Wagner Hotel. This was really a growing concern. This is an interesting photograph as well. Of course, we all know where the nice condos are down on the river. And here's what was there before. Back here you can see what is now the Main Street Grill. And then you can see the Methodist Episcopal Church steeple that was on the corner right over here where Foker's gas station was. It was up there in the corner, looming over the village. Another interesting photograph. I didn't go over across into the lagoons to get this photograph, of course, but it is the same building, the French restaurant, but it was the Vermilion Boat Club, and this photograph was taken. And I was talking with Sandy just a little earlier. We were talking about another picture. I have an indoor picture of this building here when it was a laundromat. And that's where Sandy's mom, I guess it was his mother, went. It's owned by Lechner's.
I think Mary Lechner's sister lived up there. She had a little apartment. Right just off of the laundromat.
Here's where Larry grew up, Larry Howell. He lived in this little place. Now this is Larry's grandfather, great grandfather. Oh, yeah. It's their great grandfather, and this is down almost across from the French restaurant today. And here's the little house that sits back off the road. He lived there. Mr. Howe is the town blacksmith. He was a Civil War veteran, but he fought on the other side. That's where Larry lived. Yeah. This, of course, is the water treatment plant. Terrible, terrible place, the way it looks. It was a big step forward for Vermilion when they had a water treatment plant, though. Powered by steam. This is the Wells house. There's there'll be a few other pictures of it, but down on the corner of Huron and Main Street. Beautiful home, really. But it had a lot of different names. The Wells House, it was the Steamboat Hotel, it was just a lot of different names. And here's an old drawing of that corner. I guess this little house here is supposed to be this house, but it's an old house. I've only been in it once. I went up to one of the apartments one day. It's an interesting place. There it is again. I can't remember offhand. It looks like they don't have the whole front porch like they did here in this photograph here. But gee, that must have been a nice place to sit and just watch the day go by. Just a nice area. This is a nice home too. This home, if you grew up in Vermilion, you're very familiar with this home and being around here and on the beach and out in front of this house. Just what a beautiful place. To my knowledge, it was the first and maybe only full concrete home that was ever built in Vermilion. It had that tile roof on it. Just a nice, beautiful place. I don't know what year this was taken, but you can see how the ivy and stuff was growing up on the walls. They had this beautiful porch out here, lion eyes. take a good look at it because it's not going to be there much longer. This is one of my favorite places in Vermilion. I don't go in there anymore because things have changed and there's too many people running around there. I don't like that. But I spent a lot of time down here on this beach and behind the Wakefield home over here. It was so nice down there. That's where I learned to swim, and a lot of other kids in Vermilion learned to swim down on this beach here. There was nothing better in the summertime than to go down there and sit on a log by the lake and watch a storm come in from the west over the lake. You see all the boats coming off the lake real fast, trying to beat the storm to get into port. And boy, the lake would just come right up. It would come right up to the sidewalk where those cars are right there. The lake would just wash right up to you there. Such a beautiful, beautiful place. This is a nice photograph. I don't know who this lady is, but you can see the Vermilion light at the end of the pier. Of course, that's what it looks like today in that upper left-hand photograph. Such a nice, memorable place. There are a lot of pictures taken in this area and also at the lighthouse. A lot of people from Linwood used to go over to that light to take pictures. It was a romantic place. This obviously was a hotel as well. The bed and breakfast today, Gilchrist House. From some of the things I've read, F.W. Wakefield, before he built his house and he would come to Vermilion, I don't know whether he came on boats or how he got here, but he would stay at this hotel. And I'm thinking, I don't know this to be a fact, but I'm thinking that he was looking over the land when he was here, staying, looking around Vermilion, and he spotted this old home that was sitting on the hill where he eventually built his house and decided that would be the place for him to build. But I think he got that from staying at this hotel when it was a hotel. Different owners over the years had it. And then Gilchrist, of course, used it as his home. Margaret lives across the street there. Can't see her house. Vermilion, a different place. All the cars lining the streets, the theater, the gift shop in the Western Union. Over here's a restaurant. And you could see the Lakeshore Electric tracks running down the middle of the street. When that picture was taken, it was coming to an end. Another picture of the corner of Division, Main, and Liberty. The reason I took this photo is because of this building right here. Of course, this is the bank, as we know. It looks much the same. You can't mistake it in the older picture where it's taken. At least I can't. And at the time, the corner store was the Pelton McGraw store. So it's a pretty early picture. Later, it was the Ritter and Unser store before the Erie County Bank bought the part of the building there. Streets are not in too good a condition. Can you imagine walking there in the summertime, rainstorm, like it is here? This one, when I was a little kid, I used to look at this sign, and it just amazed me. That, of course, is the Erie County Bank. And they had the restaurant with a hand pointing down to Okagi's restaurant. And it's still there. The remnants of that sign still exist. I wish the hand was still there. Of course, there's no restaurant down there anymore. This house is right next to the Vermilion History Museum. I don't really know why my grandfather took the picture of the house. I have no idea. It was right next door to his place. But it's a nice home, as you can see. And you look at these old windows on the top of this house and then see how they got replaced with these things. Those windows were beautiful windows. Back here is the restroom. Part of the reason that I wanted to see this picture, if you look over here to the left, I'm trying to point at, that's the back of the print shop. And you'll see back there a small porch on the back. And I was trying to gauge whether what I did later, I tore off part of the back of that building and put a porch back there again. But I was trying to see if I had done it correctly. And the picture was helpful. Behind there are the stables for behind the town hall and the Congregational Church. This photo is interesting for a number of reasons. This house obviously still exists. This house here, same house. And I think this, in both pictures, the house is in the same at the same site. However, this house, I have a audio tape that Harvey Kropp did some years ago, and he talks about this house. This house used to sit across the tracks on Decatur Street, where Parsons built his house. It's a brick house. I don't know who lives there. Margaret, who lives in that house today? It's on the across from where Williams lived. Brick. Well, that's where this house used to sit, and they moved it from that site across the tracks to this site here. And again, I'm always amazed when they move these great big homes and buildings and stuff, and they're still standing. This house is down it's the second house from the corner on Decatur and South Street, on the west side of the street. This is a Buddy Ennis photograph or a Roberts photograph, and I liked it for a lot of reasons. This older one here. One of the reasons I liked it is because it hasn't changed much. Here's Hart's, here's the restroom. But what's interesting here, these cars, they're all parked. So it's hard for some people to imagine. A car is parked along the Liberty Avenue on the right side of the street. You are allowed to do that. I have a lot of photos of this church. It's a nice old building, and it looks much the same. The upper photo, you can see how it's changed. The lower photo, part of the church, they enlarged the church. This house is gone now. That was a parsonage at one time. Pretzer served that church probably longer than any other minister at that church. People really liked him. And I think he came back with his family even after that. Another picture of the same church. This, of course, is the older one, unless somebody's driving horses around town lately. But there's some differences in this picture. I have other pictures, and I'll get to why they're different. But you can see the windows are still the same. This is the steeple on that church today. And this one is interesting. You see that ladder? There's a guy right there. I don't know what he was doing, but I wouldn't have done it. Wow. Yeah, parachute. The same church. One of the things I want to point out in these photographs, obviously this is the church now. This is the older church with a horse out here. The church in the lower photograph is sitting close to the ground. What they did was that they raised the church and made the fellowship hall. But when they raised it, they also moved it back away from Grand Street because it was too close to Grand Street. And again, here they moved a great big building. And that was a long time ago, so how they could accomplish it is beyond me. Another picture of basically of that church, but I caught this picture because of what I could see here. Here's the edge of the church, here and here. And back here are the houses during some parade. So things have changed, but they stayed the same. The mill. If anybody wonders, I doubt if anybody does, but if anybody wonders why they call it Mill Manor, this is why. Here's the mill. An interesting photograph. I think I probably have another set of photos of this too. But interesting because they've got cars in the photo, horses, and trains, different modes of transportation. Steam power. This, of course, is the Catholic Church. And that's pretty much the same. The basic building still exists, pretty much the same. You can see that the steeple on where the bell is the same. This building is across from Bailey's hardware store. It's the Wells building. This also was the seminary. It used to sit in Hanover Square right over here. It was the school, one of Vermilion's early schools. That building was moved from Hanover Square to this site where you see in this photograph. At the time this photo was taken, Pat Weisgeiber had an antique shop in the lower part here. And over the years, there were several different businesses that were in and out of this building. But the reason I have it at all is because the Vermilion News, when it first was printed in this building. First it started upstairs, and they moved it downstairs, and then that's when my grandparents bought it, and then they built a new building, moved it across the tracks. Unfortunately, this building is gone. It's really too bad. It was a very historic building. It's probably in terrible shape. This is also an interesting photograph. A lot of these are from my point of view. But this, of course, you'll remember it as Doc Halley's house. A lot of people will. But at the time when this was taken, it was Doc Szymanski's house. That's his name with the door down here. So it was a doctor's office and a home. It's kind of a nice looking place. Szymanski actually, I think it was during World War II, he gave up the practice and went into the Army as an Army surgeon. That explains a lot, Larry. That's why he left town. Another photograph of Liberty Avenue looking east. Looks much the same today. We're almost standing right where that picture was taken. You can see across the street where the guy has the business over here and the house on the corner. And down here, the restaurant and the theater. Up here is a Pontiac dealership. And you can see the tracks. Now that, for the Lakeshore Electric, that was really getting down toward the end of the time. I think around 1937-38 was about the end of Lakeshore coming through towns, unfortunately. I wish they had it today. A lot of these things are iconic to me. They may not be to a lot of other people. They remember them differently. But Foppers was a place I never would have thought in a million years when I was a kid that would disappear. Never, ever. And yet here it is. It's gone. It was just about gone when I took that other photograph. But what a going business that was for years and years and years. Another going business. Liberty Theater. What a neat place to be. Have fun. Next door was the bank. Then it became Williams Law Office. Now it's the wine vault. Probably there are a lot of people here that spent a lot of time at this theater. Cost a dime to go to the show on Sunday. Dime for popcorn. Had a quarter, you were rich. Here it is again. Part of the reason I did this picture kind of again is because Chris Foppers was disappearing, but these other buildings that were here at that time. This building here was a restaurant, but when I was young, it was called the Goody Goody Bar restaurant. And this building here, back here, was a gift shop. It was split in half. With one building, there was a partition went down the middle. On one side was the Western Union. On the other side was the News gift shop, my grandmother's business. Some of you people may know or have known a guy named Ralph Bard. Ralph Bard came to Vermilion because he was a telegraph operator and he worked for Western Union. And next door in my grandmother's shop was a lady named Mary Jane Reese. And of course Ralph married Mary Jane. They met in that way. Probably went to the theater. Yes. Yeah. Sleeping there with paper bags. This is the corner of Friendship Park today. This is what happened to the building that was there at one time. When this building burned, there was a Pontiac dealer downstairs. Upstairs was the mayor's office. A lot of Vermilion's records got destroyed in that fire. As you can see, it was a pretty bad fire. At one time, this was Guy Davis General Store. This, some people may remember, the White Inn restaurant. To the right would be George Rathman's store, which became a lot of things. Margaret's store is to the right. Parking lot. But the White Inn and then this house next door, that's unbelievable. When you look at that area today, that house was a good-sized home. And the restaurant wasn't big, but it wasn't terribly small either. So in that area, all of these things were there at one time. A couple doctors lived in this house over the years. I don't know why they did. I got the lower picture from Fred Wetzler some time ago. Fred's gone now, and I like the photograph, and it is of what you see here. Over on the left, you see the back of the bank, and down the street. This is Bill Peters' Plymouth car. It's convertible. Bill's parents owned, at the time, they owned the newsstand, and that's why that car is parked there. And Paul's snack shop sign is in there, so Paul was doing business. Another reason I like this photo is at one time, a friend of mine named Bill Ream, we hitchhiked to Lorraine to Sears on Broadway. He had to get some paint for his parents, and he didn't want to spend the money on the bus, so we hitchhiked. So we came back and we're walking down the street with this gallon of paint, and he got right about here and dropped it, and the paint went all over the sidewalk. And if the sidewalk hadn't changed, it would still be there. Still had mailboxes. I don't know if they have mailboxes out like that anymore or not. It's Okagi's restaurant. Early Okagi's. Okagi actually started on the other side of the street and eventually moved over into this building here. This is before he put that fancy glass front on it, but the lights were his, the street lights. And over here, you'll see it looks like a tire shop, but I think at one time that was also a leather dealership. Leather. He made saddles, he made reins and stuff like that for horses. It's fitting that it would become a tire shop. Later, it might have become clothing, I'm not sure. This is not a real old photo, but it's an interesting photo. The reason I used it here is because Rathman's store was still in business when that picture was taken. This is not terribly old. That might have been taken in the 50s, and I don't know why all these old cars are there, but it's not terribly old. But the cars are interesting. But the reason I like the photo is because Rathman's there, and there's the barber shop, there's Paul's snack shop, and there's the newsstand. And they're all in that photograph, and the way it's changed. That's even changed today because the barber shop's gone. This is something that most people in Vermilion recognize readily as Hart's Drugstore, knew it as Hart's. It really didn't change much. At the time this picture on the right was taken, the building was split in two, like some of the other shops I talked about. And on the left side was a bar, Wagner's Bar. Wagner was, of course, affiliated with Wagner's Hotel. Another picture at the corner. This picture, again, I like. We recognize everything here, but it's the Lakeshore Electric tracks running down the middle of the street there that I thought were kind of neat. This, I took this photo above the top photo because of this bottom photo. You could stand in that area and look what you could see way back when. You could see out to the harbor, how beautiful it was. Now, I can say that it was beautiful, but, you know, that's me in hindsight. Sometimes it wasn't so beautiful. You know, the smell of the nets, the tar and stuff like that, it wasn't always great. The noise of the fish boats, they were pretty loud. The cannon again. These are two Vermilion Boy Scouts. I think this picture was taken because the boy who took it was also a scout. And I think it was just a project. At one time, Boy Scouts did have badges for photography. I don't know, maybe they still do. But it shows, of course, the restrooms in the back there. And also across the street, you can see some of the stores that were in business back then. Down here was the post office. Over here's a meat market. And that may have still been Sid Creech that Larry's always talking about. But later on, it was the Park Market with the Jeffrey boys. You can see the Maud Elton Hotel in the back. Another picture of Division Main Street. A&P on the corner. Traffic light. A lot of people are familiar with the Maud Elton Hotel. This kind of gives you an idea of how large this building was. That upper floor and then the Widow's Walk on top. There's a drive that came through there, and people probably drove in and let people off, went into the hotel. A very, very nice place. It was after. It was after, and the Fisher Building hadn't been built yet. Here is another one at the top here. The Fisher Building doesn't exist yet. Here's the Maud Elton. And I drew that line because it goes from those pillars on the front porch down to the pillars on the front porch in the lower part. And you can see that they took the roof. This top floor is gone. It was on there for quite a while, even after they had built the Fisher Building. But I think when Ken Castle had the building, he had that top floor taken off. He had his reasons. I don't know how many people have ever been in that building. I was in there several times before when I wasn't supposed to be. When we were little kids, not little, but when we were young, we snuck up the back way up to the fire escape and got into the building and went in there. It was very interesting because all the mattresses were filled with straw. They still had like brass beds in the rooms, and they had there was no running water or anything in there. Stu White was one of the guys who I was with, and we did that. And Stu took some of the numbers off the doors. And the last time I saw Stu, he told me he had them and he was going to give them to me. But then Stu passed away, so I'll probably never see him again. But yeah. Take it off. Well, it's gone. Nothing we can do about it. The person who has that building today has put some money into it. It looks rather nice. I don't know what they're doing on the inside. The other thing I was going to mention is that they had the American Legion had it for a while, and Bryce Needing had it for a while as a restaurant. And I remember going into that area on the second floor there, and the ceilings were that tin ceilings, and they were really nice. Just a nice building, I think. It's just amazing that they could move that gigantic building all the way down the hill. Another nice building. Hasn't changed really a great deal. The Lakeshore Electric station, you can see over here again the Maud Elton Hotel, so you can see how big it was in relation to that. I remember behind this building there was a lot of electrical equipment. I don't know how that worked. Substation. Yeah. Al Duane probably knew more about it than I would. There again is in front of that station. You see the Lakeshore Electric right here. The old post office, which is a 2-story, I don't know what they're doing there anymore. They were making windows downstairs and apartments upstairs. But before that building even existed, then there was Hardy Inn. I think at one time it was also called the Riverside Inn. I think when I was younger it was the Riverside. And you could see the big building back here, which belongs to the Buyers Fair. Yeah. This area, it was always difficult for people, including the post office. There's a creek. If you go up on South Street, Ohio Street, on the west part of it, you'll notice that the hill goes down like so on the other side of the Catholic Church, etc., before you get to the funeral home. There was a creek that ran through there, and young Riddle had his part covered somehow. I think that was the last part that anybody could see. And I don't know where it runs from, but in any case, it runs through there and all the way probably under the railroad, and then runs down through here, through where that Hardy's Inn is and where the post office was. And people there were always complaining about the smell. They couldn't figure out where it was coming from, but it had to be from that. Nobody ever said what it was, but it had to be from something like that. That's probably why this place is not, I don't know what kind of rentals they have in there or businesses or anything. The guy who has it, I don't think wants it. But this, of course, the future home of the Vermilion Boat Club, which it is down here. Remember the sheds on the other side to the west of this building here that belonged to the Fisher Lumber Company. Down here is where Tom Mose lives. I think you could see him in that picture. At this time, I think it was Lake Erie Fishery, and that might have been Meeting who had it at that point in time. You can see there's a chuck hole in the street. It's probably still there. This is a kind of a puzzle. H.B. Kishman, but that's not the same boat. This is probably built in Vermilion. Maybe that was built by Marx, maybe. Maybe it replaced this one down below. I have a picture of this at home that I keep. Yeah. This one probably, the top one replaced the bottom one at some point in time. But this ended up in Michigan. A guy who bought this boat sent me the picture because he wanted to know more about it. But all I had was this lower photograph. This kind of amuses me. This is Big Ed Lamp's boat, the Grandon. Here it was, a very nice boat. They used it to transport people to the islands and places like that. And you could see the crowds. And it was a beautiful, beautiful looking steamboat. Ed bought it and turned it into a work tug, as you can see here. He really put some miles on this boat. But it was so beautiful. I have some drawings. Somebody gave me that were made when Ed was going to rearrange things in that boat. They're just sketches of how he was going to do things, because he wanted to use it for, as you see there. Big Ed won and lost several fortunes. This is, I think at the time this was the Warren Smith's gas station. Buddy probably knows better than I do. This is where George Roberts worked at one time. I have a picture. That could be George out there for all I know. Yeah, it could be George Roberts. And as you can see, it's Freeman Eckley now today. That also is I've got another picture that I got from Buddy of this window. It was taken probably in 1937 when they were doing windows for the Centennial. And they have just some very interesting things in that window. One of them was a flag, an old flag. I have no idea what might have happened to all that stuff. It's probably in the family somewhere. But this whole area, whether it was Warren Smith or whoever, is a very interesting area. This is also interesting. This is Ernie Hayes. This was a folder that was sent to me. I don't even remember who sent it to me. One of his relatives, could be a grandson or something. That little hole there was because this thing folds, and when you fold it, what you see is Ernie standing there. And this was Ernie's gas station down by the bridge where Alan Thorley Deloitte is today. You can see the old fuel pumps. But I was told, I think Nuggy might have told me, that when the family moved to Vermilion, now he did this during the Depression, by the way. He came in and started this gas station. But when they moved to Vermilion, they lived in this little building there for a while. And this over here was the ice house. Called the bridge station. This looks much the same today as it did when they built it. This is pretty close to when they built this bridge. As you can see, they've made nice improvements. They've got sidewalks where you can walk across. That was a big deal putting that bridge in there. Before they put these sidewalks in, there used to be a bicycle path that ran along the edge of the street here, and there was a walk, of course, across the bridge on this side. But it just didn't have a sidewalk going to it. One time I was riding a bicycle. Somebody had a racing bicycle, and so I thought I'd try it out. It didn't have any brakes. So I'm riding down Liberty Avenue as fast as I can go, and I get to the bridge. Well, there's cars coming back and forth the bridge, so I cut over into the bicycle path, got onto that walk there and slammed right into the side of the bridge. I thought I was going to go right over the railing. My glasses went off and fell down into the river. And one of the Leahy boys went down later and he found the glasses by the side of the river, but I thought I was going to be blind for a while. Vermilion Lagoons. This photograph was taken by Sterling Smith, Warren Smith's brother. And things have changed. They were changing fast then, but here they really changed. They had all of these willows growing here. Now they have all these homes in here. Linwood Park, that really, it's unmistakable. There's changes, but not a whole bunch of them. You can see that it's Linwood Park, the entrance. Same here. This is Nokomis. Of course, there's no houses where these houses are. And I think this one here, there's several houses missing here in that area in this lower photograph. Here's the mill again, as they continue to build on. I don't know how many people had a chance when this was still there to go in it, but it was a very interesting place to visit. When the Vermilion News was still publishing, we used to deliver papers, and one of the papers went into the office, which is down right in this area here. I remember going in there. And later on, I knew somebody who was living in there, and I got to go in and see what it was like then, too. This is also kind of an interesting photograph. South Street School is really a nice school. I don't care what anybody says. But you can see they built on to the right side. This whole section was added later. Of course, they added onto the back as well. But when that was built and it was going pretty good, you can see how well they took really good care of it. It was nicely landscaped and everything was really kept up. It was the same inside as well. It was kept up. Larry kept it up. It's school again. I've never really been inside this building. Probably people here who have been. I don't know what it might be like today. I can't imagine that it's too nice now. But it really was a big, big school. We're in safety clothes. Crystal Gardens. That's basically where the bank is today. Alberta Inn. Interesting to look at Alberta. When you're looking at these photos, notice this house back here. And here it is here. You'll notice that the inn is closer to that house. Yeah. Yeah. No, they didn't move the house forward. Here it is again, the old part, then the older part. And here it was the day it burnt down. It didn't totally burn down, but it burned bad enough to tear it down. That was a big fire. There's a closer photo of it. It was closer to the road. This I've always found to be an interesting photograph. You know, this is the bridge at Vermilion Lake. Over here's the car wash. And this is what it did look like. Right here is where the railroad, you know the railroad runs under the bridge, but also the Lakeshore Electric ran through there. They called it the diagonal crossing. And a lot of people were killed in this area here. So much so that they had crosses, you know, they do that some places. They had crosses along the road. Finally, they built the bridge, but Lakeshore Electric quit running at that point in time, so it ran over the railroad, which is a good thing. But it's interesting to see the road like it is. It looks very flat, but it does change further on. This hasn't changed much at all. This one I got from top photo is from Dennis Lamont up in Birmingham. And I haven't been really up there much for a long time. So things have changed some, as you can see. I was amazed when Dennis sent me this photo. I was so used to all of this. This photo, there's two photos here, believe it or not. I like this photo because I like the photos of the kids. These were kids probably from the Congregational Church next to the town hall. So I'm looking at the photograph and I see the crack up here in the concrete or stone. So I went over there to the town hall and I looked and there it was. This is what they call the Pelton House down on the corner of Decatur and Liberty Avenue. That hasn't really changed much at all. It looks pretty much the same as it always did. There are two chairs. These chairs aren't exactly alike, but they are from a set. You can see by the legs on them. This is the Olympic Club. It doesn't look like that right now, I can tell you that. It doesn't look like that either. But the lower photo was taken in 1937 when the club did a celebration with the town for the centennial. This would be more like it. This is the Olympic Club. Hopefully that's the way it'll look this summer sometime. This is a flood. I can't put a year on it, but it is the way it looked during a flood. It's probably a spring flood. This building back here was what used to be Sloppy Joe's Saloon. They tore that down, so it's on the back of this structure here now. It's nicer. And this building over here is a house. It used to be the caretaker's cottage. When Georgie and I were first married, we were the caretakers down there, and we lived in this cottage. And our first flood, the water came up pretty high. I was wearing hip boots, etc. But I was afraid the water was going to get in the cottage. So my prized possession was a Panasonic stereo. So I packed up the Panasonic stereo, picked up the box, walked out the front door, and tripped on the step. I saved it, but I thought, oh no, the best laid plans. Just about a little over a month ago, we had a flood down there, and the water was much deeper than what you're looking at here. It was probably about 5 feet, probably about up to here, and with all the ice floating around in it. And when the water went down, it dropped the ice, and the ice, a lot of it's still sitting on the grounds. It still hasn't melted. This, I spend a lot of time at the grocery store for a lot of reasons. Early in the morning. So, but both of these photographs, that one photograph, the car dealership is still there. And this one here. Over here, and it's not the Ford dealership, it's the Chrysler dealership, and then this was the steakhouse. Again, I was amazed that was gone so quickly. Both of them. They're gone. I'm going to stop here for a second. This photograph is the background for all of these photographs. This is a photograph of George Wakefield's writing. And he wrote for the Photojournal, he wrote for the Vermilion News. George wrote a lot. This was his handwriting. It looks okay to me. My sister Nancy used to do the typesetting because most of the other typesetters couldn't read his writing, but it looks fine to me. But these are some of his original writings. George wrote about the Civil War. He wrote about a whole bunch of things. He was very knowledgeable. And that's me. If you want to get me, that's where I am. And that's it. Thank you.